This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations. This week's guest is Teri of A Foodie Stays Fit, which is her blog all about food and fitness. Teri was born and raised in Utah and now lives in North Carolina. Teri has run a handful of marathons, and we spoke on the Wednesday after the Boston Marathon, so that's why I might sound a little hoarse. Teri wrote in her journal when she was 21 that one of her lifetime goals was to qualify for Boston. At that time, she was running 11-minute miles, and over the years she got closer and closer to making it happen, and eventually she did. She's now run Boston twice. We talked about some of her tips for finding enjoyment and fun in the process, even if you're far away from your goal. Teri just left corporate America after 13 years to run her own business. We dug into this, taking risks, and her take on balance. We also talked about how important racing something like a 5K can be for the lessons that you can learn both in running and life in general. Enjoy. Hello, I'm here with Teri from A Foodie Stays Fit after she recently completed the Boston Marathon. So thanks for joining me today, Teri.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're talking Boston. We're here in Cambridge. You wandered over from Boston, and what was Monday like?
Monday was magical. I ran last year, and so compared to the conditions last year, it felt amazing. I watched your preview of the course that you did, and I literally don't remember like most of what you showed.
That's what everyone said. It's like a totally different day.
I don't even remember.
Skies.
Yeah, it was amazing. So Monday I had a great race. I had a 10-minute PR. I mean, it got hot. I got sunburned, but overall, like it felt so much easier. I felt really well prepared, and I just had a really good day.
So what were the crowds like?
Oh my gosh, the best. It was. I thought the crowds were great last year, like considering the conditions. Right. I thought it was really good.
It's like a decent marathon turnout last year.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy. People were like, oh, bummer about the crowds. And I'm like, I thought they were great. So this year, it blew my mind. Like, I just could not believe how many people were there. It was awesome.
So I was chatting with a friend, and she's an accomplished ultra runner. She's run a whole bunch of races, short, medium, long distance. So she's run the gamut of, super cool places. And she said, there's nothing like this. There's nothing that even comes close to comparing you. And you just have to experience it firsthand.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, and I've done really, really small races, like in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And then I guess the probably biggest I've done besides Boston is Salt Lake City and then the Cherry Blossom in DC. And it just, I can't even explain it to people. It's just, there's so many people, but then they're just so happy and like supportive, and it's awesome.
I mean, I have to apologize because I'm hoarse, as you might be able to tell, because I was just screaming all day. So I was out at mile 18.
I was looking for you.
I missed you somehow. I was out at mile 18. I was tracking you and I missed you, but I was out at mile 18. We were there for a couple hours, and then we were hungry. We went and got lunch in Coolidge Corners on mile 24, and my friends were cold. And I was like, wait, just like let me shout to 10 more people, 10 more, okay, 10 more, 5 more. And it's just like, it's impossible to peel yourself away from the course. It's just so fun to see people out there crushing
It'd be fun to watch.
It is. So a lot of people say, oh, I'll never get to Boston. I'll never get to Boston. But if you're listening to this and you're far from a BQ, or you're not going to fundraise, get to Boston. You can cheer.
Mm-hmm. I also said I'd never get to Boston. Like, I wrote in my journal when I was like 21 in college, and it was a financial planning class. And you had to like write your life goals, and I wrote qualify for Boston.
At 21?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was running like 11-minute miles. So I was like, ha ha ha, qualify for Boston.
So
and here I am.
Let's talk about that journey. So you've run Boston now twice, and you've qualified twice.
Yes.
Cool. How did you do that?
Oh gosh. I started running when I was like 15, and my mom's a runner, and I was never fast. And then I guess in my mid-20s, I was actually dating somebody who was pretty fast, and I just wanted to keep up because I'm competitive.
Right.
So I started getting faster, and I think so. My first marathon I ran in like 4:01, and then I had a really, really good half marathon. I ran like a 1:32 or something, which was amazing for me. And I was like, gosh, I wonder if I could qualify for Boston. And so I trained for a marathon just to see. And I ran Wrightsville Beach in North Carolina and qualified there. I had never been so sore in my life. I was like, holy hell. I was so sore. Ran Boston last year, qualified at Boston last year. And so I think it was just like slowly chipping away at it. I hear from a lot of people like, gosh, I really want to improve my speed. Like, how did you get so fast? You know, it's all relative. I'm not that fast. And I'm like, well, how long have you been running? They're like 3 months. And I'm like, keep at it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a long journey. Like if you're not naturally born like super fast, I think you can still make huge improvements. You just have to be really, really consistent.
Yeah. I was talking to Peter Bromka, who until last week was the fastest non-elite in the field. He was eventually moved up into the elite field. So he's got a 2:19:40. And he's like, that doesn't happen overnight. That's, 20 years of running.
Yeah.
He's like, people ask me all the time, how do I BQ? It's like, well, just keep doing what you're doing for a long period of time. I've tried to BQ now 3 times, and that spans, 2019? That spans 4 years now.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet. And people are so stuck in I'm going to do it the next cycle. I'm going to do the next cycle. So what are some of your tips for enjoying the consistency and enjoying that process?
I think finding little improvements along the way. So I think one thing that was really, really helpful for me when I started like really wanting to improve my speed was signing up for a lot of 5Ks and half marathons.
Yeah, yes.
And getting the confidence boost from something shorter. Like, okay, I do have speed in me. So how can I work to improve that speed at a longer distance? So I think smaller goals were important. Identifying wins. Like I used to have IT band issues for years and years and years. And then it finally went away once I addressed some weaknesses. And so that was a big win for me, was getting away from IT band problems. And then just finding other things. So like you're not solely focused on that. Like I did CrossFit for a couple years pretty seriously. And that was a really nice way for me to, when I was feeling frustrated with running, I was like, okay, well I can go.
Another outlet.
Yeah. I'm like, I can go deadlift 250 pounds.
Right.
And like, I feel really good about that. And so I think being super consistent, but not letting it consume you was something that was helpful for me.
So the not letting it consume you is an interesting point. So your full-time job is outside of running and outside of social media. Well, not really. You're in social media for full-time, right?
Well, funny. I actually just left my corporate job a week ago.
Oh, all right. There we go.
Yeah.
So big change. So
it was a big change.
What are you doing now?
I'm working for myself. Yeah. I have
Awesome.
a couple of different companies that I'm running, and it was awesome. I was crossing the finish line, and it was like a big celebration of training for Boston after working 80 plus hours a week for the last year and finally feeling like I could breathe.
So that's awesome. Let's talk about finding joy in work and like following your passion. And following what makes you happy. How did you have the confidence to do that?
Again, it's like just putting in the work before you can make the leap. So I knew I wanted to work for myself about a year ago. And I also have a finance background, and so I'm very conservative financially. I'm like, I'm going to save a shit ton of money so that I like feel comfortable.
Can do this.
Yeah. And I just worked my butt off. And I don't think when people work for themselves, I don't think anybody knows what they're actually doing in the beginning, and you figure it out along the way.
Just like this podcast.
Right. Exactly. I'm like, I don't know what half the stuff is that's on the table. It looks
Nor do I.
It looks really professional. But no, I just kept chipping away at, like, I have 3 different main businesses that I run, and I just kept growing them and learning as I went until I got to the place where I felt really, really comfortable working for myself. And I really loved my corporate career. Like I had a great corporate career. But it got to the point where I didn't feel like I was learning what I wanted to be learning there, and that I was learning more on my own. So I I don't know if that answers your question,
definitely.
but
so you mentioned the 5Ks, and I think the serial 5K racing is the single best thing that any person can do, whether they're a runner or not. Or to put it a different way, to teach you lessons that apply in running and life. It's the kind of thing where you can do it and fail and do it and fail and do it and fail and learn every time. And it's not like you have to respect the recovery like you do with a marathon.
Yeah.
So I spent, I don't know, a year focused on 5K training, and it gave me such confidence in the ability to hurt and the ability to bust through this plateau or bust through these hurdles or barriers. And I talked in a prior podcast episode with Adrian Langelier, who's a sports psychology consultant, about like the pain of a 5K, and the pain of a 5K applies in other aspects of life. And her biggest tip was don't disregard the pain, don't ignore it, accept it, and welcome it in. So how have you taken the 5K and half marathon training and racing and applied that into the marathon? It sounds like it's worked.
I think learning to accept suffering is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
There's like the stupid phrase, no pain, no gain or whatever.
Right.
And I think that there's a difference between injury pain and discomfort. And I think the 5K in particular and the half, it teaches you to get to your limit where it's like, man, this is really uncomfortable. But you just learn to tolerate it. And I think building up that threshold of discomfort is super helpful when you get to longer runs, and it's a different kind of discomfort. You know, it's like this pace isn't that fast, but I'm going to hold it for a really long time. I think it sharpens you mentally, and then your body starts to respond in different ways physically.
Definitely. So why did you get into running? Switching gears completely.
Yeah. I think just because my mom did. Like, all of my friends played sports growing up. I went to a super competitive high school where everyone was really good at everything. And I was not good at anything requiring coordination. And I don't even know. I guess it was, I just started, maybe I did.
I think that's the Ferris Bueller line. I just started running.
So
why do you still do it?
Oh gosh. I wouldn't know how to not do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
part of life.
It's just part of, my husband always tells me, like, if I'm like, oh gosh, I mean, everyone, like, even as much as they love running, it's like, I don't want to go for my run today. It's cold. I'm tired, whatever. And my husband's like, you never regret going for a run.
Right.
Like, and it's so cliche, but it's true. Like, it's just, I feel more me when I'm running than if I'm not.
So what gets you really excited about running?
I love being outside.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all spend so much time inside working, and I work a lot. I love just being outside and like feeling the conditions on my skin, which sounds so weird. Like, I just like being outside. I love goals. Like, I'm a very goal-driven person. So even if it's not, a race or a time, hitting a new distance. So I hit some all-time weekly highs when I was training for Boston this year, and that was super exciting.
Yeah.
Just something new and pushing the limits of what I can do, even if it's nothing big, but it's new.
Cool. What does post-race recovery look like for you?
Well, I listened to Meb speak yesterday, so feeling super inspired.
Nice.
I have a coach this year. I hired a coach, and so he has it.
Who are you working with?
Enoch Nadler.
Okay.
He was a 9th American overall. Good job, Enoch. So proud of him. Yeah. He has it kind of mapped out where it's just a few days easy and then super short recovery runs starting Friday.
So you take Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like 4 or 5 days off?
Yeah, 4 days completely off. Yeah.
Nice.
Although I really want to run one more time while I'm here.
I saw a lot. So we're recording this on Wednesday. I saw a lot of people wearing marathon jackets along the river today. And it's like, come on, guys. It's like 36 hours afterwards.
No, it feels good to walk.
Yeah.
It feels really, really good to walk. That blister is what I'm like, oh man, I don't know when I'll run again. But I'll probably start easing into super short, easy runs next week, and probably won't look at my pace or my distance and just go by time and see how I feel. Yeah,
I saw a tweet from one of the Northern Arizona elite guys, and he was saying that post race recovery is not laziness. Laziness is when you aren't doing anything, and you're also not doing something that warrants recovery. So I wouldn't look at it as, laziness. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll lose all my fitness if I, take 3 days off post race. It's like, no, you lose all your fitness if you get injured by coming back too early.
I don't have issues with like post race recovery. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm good. It's like the mental freedom to just I'll do whatever I want. And if I don't want to run, like maybe I'll just go lift some weights and really, it's like, it used to bother me after a race to take time off. And now I'm like, sweet, let's have a break.
One thing that I liked is I was listening to Ben Rosario on Mario Frioli's podcast, and he said, my team takes days off post race. They're professional athletes.
Yeah.
Their job is to perform. If there was any benefit to running the day after a marathon, they'd be doing it, whether they liked it or not. But they don't.
Right. Did you see Michael Wardian's tweet, though? Am I saying his last name right?
Yes.
It was throwing that giant ball around. I'm like, what is he doing?
So he was on our panel on Saturday.
I'm so bummed I missed
it. And he has just this really interesting perspective because he's built up the capacity to run post marathon.
It's amazing.
Post 100 mile. He's famous for doing, an all out mile after he runs 100 miles. And it's just like, most people can't do that.
Yeah, he's
most
so
people shouldn't do that.
Yeah, like he's like the exception.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes from how much he loves running, I think. And he just truly loves the process. And there's perhaps some physiological or psychological benefit that he gets from the pure enjoyment of it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What do you have? What are you looking forward to the rest of this year?
Oh gosh. So I might go do the Boulder, which I've never done.
It's so much fun.
I've heard it's awesome.
So Boulder this is like the third time we've talked about it on this podcast. Boulder is a race out in Boulder, Colorado, Memorial Day. And they have 100 waves, and
100?
It's the most perfectly executed event I've ever experienced.
More than Boston?
More than Boston. They have like 50,000 runners. It's crazy.
Gosh.
It might not be 50,000, but it's 100 waves. So I was in wave 2, and I thought I was jaded of how perfect it was being so far up. And I was chatting with a friend at a coffee shop the next day, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was just, wave 2, but everything was perfect.
That's awesome.
And a lady was listening to us. She's like, hey, I don't mean to, butt in, but like I was in like wave 87 and my experience was the same.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that makes me so excited.
Yeah, so it's just like you do the 10K, and then a lot of people will go back and fun run it. And so it's just like the perfect way to race really hard and then have lots of fun.
Nice. Okay, I'm even more excited now. Yeah. So that's still that's like 85% that I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go run the American Fork Canyon half marathon in Utah.
Yep.
I grew up in Utah, and I mean, it's insanely beautiful.
What are some of your favorite places to get back to?
I really like running in my hometown. There's just so many great trails in Utah that I took for granted. And it's nice to just go zone out and not worry about traffic. So I used to run up Mill Creek Canyon or Big Cottonwood Canyon. I lived in Salt Lake City, and it's just so accessible. Nice. And then possibly the New River Half, which is in the mountains of North Carolina, which is in June. And I haven't really decided after that. I want to do a fast half, maybe in the fall, and maybe another marathon. I don't know.
Nice. So do you bounce back and forth between road and trail? Is it seasonal?
We don't have great trails in Winston. There's like one trail around a lake, and moving from Utah to North Carolina, people are like, we have great trails. I'm like, this isn't a trail. So I really don't.
Path.
Exactly. This is a very well groomed path. And I'm too lazy during the week to go drive to find great trails. So I mostly do road races. But maybe that would be a good goal for the summer, is to go do some trails, like mix it up.
Yeah.
Get some soft surfaces.
Yes. It just feels great on the feet. Let's talk about the blog. So Foodie Stays Fit. Yep. How did you come up with that?
Oh gosh. I had a blog like even before Foodie Stays Fit when I was in college, like before blogs were a thing. People didn't know what they were. And it started to get traction just because blogs, like there weren't any. Right. And so I wanted to transition it from like my personal blog to something that was more public facing, where I could be more thoughtful. And I literally just I probably still have the piece of paper somewhere, brainstormed words that described what I wanted to talk about. And I used to be super, super into cooking, like loved cooking, and I would spend all day Saturday my mom made homemade bread all the time growing up, and I would make like these elaborate pastries and all. Anyway, so I was super hardcore foodie. Then I found out I have celiac. It's like, well, that didn't work anymore.
Right.
But no, it was just like a brainstorm 11 years ago, and I still have it.
Nice. And you're still consistent with it.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple breaks that I took, but for the most part, yeah.
So what's the goal with the blog?
Oh gosh. You think I would have thought about that? I've kind of like jumped all over, where I used to blog a lot of recipes, and then it was kind of more lifestyle, like here's what I'm doing with my life. And I've realized over the last year, what I really, really love about the blog is writing about running. And so that's where I'm trying to focus more, is like, I want to write about running. I want to connect with people about running. And that's what resonates with people, or anything I write about running. And so it's more to share like kind of my experience. And also I really, really love hearing from people that something I wrote helped them, or that it made them think that they could improve, or they learned something new. Like there's something so rewarding. It's like, I'm not even close to a professional runner, not at all. But to hear that I made a difference in someone else's running is so incredibly satisfying. And I meet so many wonderful people through the blog. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's how we met. It's like through Twitter, which is all kind of related. So I guess the goal is just share my experience running and hopefully help others.
Cool. What changes have you seen in the blogging world over the last few years? I know it's changed a lot.
It's 11 years ago, it was really more, and it's funny, I'm like cleaning up old content from the blog, and it was more like life updates. Yeah. And then it kind of transitioned to like very, very short was better. And now,
sort of like Instagram.
I mean, I guess from like a Google perspective, like if you were going to show up in Google results, it was better to like be linking to other people and keep things short. And now I kind of feel like long form's making more of a return, which I think's awesome for blogging. It almost has become more of a website as opposed to a blog. I think people think of blogs as like a personal journal, and I don't think it's that as much. Instagram and Twitter have definitely changed the blogging platform, where people can have like, Instagram can be a blog in a way where they share so much.
I used to like really desire to have a blog, and then for whatever reason I didn't. Well, I did, and I just couldn't stay consistent with it, but I found myself putting those same thoughts onto Instagram. And people really resonate with, something more than just, hey, went for a run today. It was awesome, or it sucked, or whatever. So I found that fascinating.
Yeah, and like really sharing like the experience. It used to be too that like you would blog every day and sometimes multiple times a day, and now I only blog a couple times a week because there's other platforms to share on. Like there's Twitter and Instagram, and I don't need to blow up every platform every single day, nor do I have the time. But it's definitely become less of a personal diary and more of like a
guide.
Yeah, with like my personal experience.
Cool. Do you see that changing in the future? Do you want to stay consistent with the format that it's in now?
I like the idea of, I have 10 years of content that some of it's crap and needs to be deleted, a lot of it. And some of it's still so relevant. And so I like the idea of going back and finding older content and looking at like, how is this still relevant? Can I update this? Can I push this back out there? And so that's what I'm working through now, is finding older content that's still relevant and making it fresh for people. And then also just giving things a new lens of like, here's how I approached running 10 years ago in my early 20s. And now here I am almost 35. Here's how I'm looking at running and recovery. And it's so interesting just to like read old posts. I was so hard on myself. I was so hard on myself. So yeah, I think it'll probably evolve to become just refreshing stuff, and then still putting new stuff out there as well. Cool.
So besides, giving yourself a little more grace and flexibility, how has your own running changed over the last 10 years or so?
I definitely am more well-rounded, I think.
Are you still CrossFitting?
I'm not, which I miss, but it's hard to do CrossFit really well and run really well. And I like to lift really heavy if I go to CrossFit. And shockingly, I got hurt. This is shocking information because I was trying to do both last year training for Boston.
And I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into. It's like trying to do everything at a high effort.
Yeah. And I think you can do both run. I think you can run and do CrossFit. I definitely do.
Yeah. Did you have a coach at the time?
A running coach?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Although he's super supportive of lifting. He actually partners with a CrossFit gym in Gainesville, Florida, where he's at. So he's super supportive of lifting. My gym, unfortunately, was not super supportive of running, and which is kind of like old school CrossFit.
Besides the 400 meters.
Right, exactly. Like, the long run.
We're doing 800s today.
We're doing 800s today. Get ready,
Saddle
kids.
up. We're going long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wear your running shoes. I think you can do both. I don't think you can be a top performing CrossFitter and a top performing runner. Like, unless, I mean, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And I really like to lift heavy. And so, it just got to and I'm really competitive with myself. And so if I went to the gym, I was going to go all out.
Right.
So now I do better just lifting on my own. To answer your question, I'm more well-rounded. I lift a lot more. I take rest days more seriously.
What are those?
They're this thing where you don't run.
What's that like?
Sometimes it feels really bad. And then sometimes you're like, this is the best. I'm much better about rest days. I'm much better about recovery days, which I think those are different.
Yep.
Like for me, like my recovery runs, I will not run with people on my recovery days just so I can really, really listen to my body. And if I need to go out at a 9:15, like that's what we're doing.
Yep. I've loved the shift away from people posting about their hard runs and seeing people posting about their easy runs.
Rest day brags.
Yes. Well, and even the recovery days. Like there's a group of people on Instagram now that, and you take it with a grain of salt because for some people this pace is their fast. But like people who are BQing posting about, 9:30 easy run.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see that like you can run a marathon at a 7:30 pace and then you can also, run your easy run at a 9:30 pace.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to show more often is people are like, gosh, I can't even I could never run that fast. And I'm like, well, here's my slow day.
Right.
Like I'm running slow. So I think, and my coach has been really, really good about that. Like he would tell me, he's like, you've got to slow down on your recovery days. You have to slow down.
And it feels good. It's like, it's a barometer of like, how worked are you?
Yes, exactly.
I used to struggle to keep it over 8-minute mile for recovery days. And like last week I ran like a 9:05 and an 8:45. And it's like, I'm trashed.
Yeah.
And like,
I'm
this
doing
is
such a good
great.
job going easy.
Yeah. And again, it's like it's tough to share it appropriately because like some people are like, no, that's my
fast pace.
That's my mile.
Yeah.
Or things like that. So again, you don't want to fall into the comparison game, but comparing yourself to yourself and then showing that, you can do a workout at a 7-minute pace and then you can the next day run a minute and a half slower.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. And I think seeing more people posting that is great.
Showing the contrast in training is so, I think that's another thing I've noticed is my efforts are much more varied now, like going like really, really hard, like going back to like you have to learn to suffer,
right?
Go really, really hard, but then go really, really easy. And then like warming up is a thing that I have to do now. Like my body does not respond at 5:30 in the morning anymore.
Well, we're getting into the summer, so it'll be a little warmer, but it's tough to roll out of bed and have it be 10 degrees and just jump straight into a workout.
Right.
So what does a week of training look like? How many workouts are you doing? What do you do for easy?
So like when I was leading up to Boston, I would run every day except Sundays. Sundays were my rest day from running. And I didn't notice like till halfway through my training cycle that my coach had in there that I could do like yoga or cycle or something, which is probably good because I was like, oh, I'm just not running. I didn't realize I had something else I could do. And if I was feeling really beat up, he would take one of my recovery days off and have it be a rest day. But usually I was going like a hard workout Monday. So it was just so varied, anywhere from like 1-minute repeats to like 20-minute tempo, just whatever. It was some sort of
all
workout.
minute based?
Yes, that was another thing. It was a huge difference as I only had maybe 10 runs in my training cycle that were mile based as opposed to time. and I loved it. I didn't think I would because I'm very like numbers. I like the mileage, but it was very freeing. Like I would finish a run and have no idea how far I went. Like I wouldn't even look at it on my watch. It was so weird. But I would have,
and it was all effort based.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he would give me like my, he'd give me my paces. So like this needs to be in your CV zone, or this needs to be tempo, or this needs to be threshold, or VO2 max.
But not the actual like 7:15.
No, he would give me the pace.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I would program it into my watch. I'd give myself like a window so my Garmin wasn't like yelling at me if I was off. But so Monday was a workout. Tuesday, Wednesday were usually anywhere from 60 minutes to 2 hours. Thursday was another hard workout of some sort. Friday, super easy, and then long run Saturdays.
Cool. That's a good week.
Yeah, it was good.
And you felt great through it?
I felt amazing. I mean, I had some plantar fasciitis issues I was still dealing with that I got after Boston last year out of nowhere. And then I had like some sacrum issues in my hips, so it's like I was always going to getting dry needling done or getting massage or whatever,
were those new additions into the routine?
I had done needling last year, and massage somewhat, but I definitely was more consistent this year with PT, massage, and then I started going to a chiropractor. I have like some back issues that run in the family. I was just more consistent with them, but everything felt pretty good, mostly because as soon as I felt something, I dealt with it rather than ignoring it. And then it's like, oh crap, like now this is a real problem.
Yeah, it's like, I love the line, listen to the whispers before they become screams.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, ooh.
Yeah.
That's
and
really
so
good.
It's like, when you put it in that context, it's like, oh, this little niggle, like I'm going to address it versus ignore it.
So my calf is whispering right now. Maybe I should foam roll it.
Yeah, maybe. Or dry needling is good.
Yeah.
What are some tips that you would tell Teri of 10 years ago as a runner?
Probably have more variety in my paces. So go harder, go easier. Have more confidence, like just believe that I could do more. It wasn't until I started running with someone faster who pushed me that I really started to believe that I could go faster. Prioritize sleep more. I'm really working on that, coming off of a year of working too much and not sleeping enough. Nutrition, like I've always been pretty good about nutrition. My parents had a farm growing up, and so I ate really well, but just being more intentional about fueling before and during a run.
And when did you find out you had celiac?
I was sick like all through high school growing up, and it was hard to diagnose celiac then. So I started having, I had like a colonoscopy when I was 17, which was like, that's really cool as a senior in high school. And then my doctors a few years ago, I'd gone gluten-free about 8 years ago.
Yep.
And they can't really test for
if you're gluten
right at that point,
which is crazy to think about.
It is crazy to think about. But
go back on gluten and
exactly,
like
go eat gluten for a month, and let's come back. But I have a family history of autoimmune disorders, and so they looked at all my symptoms a couple years ago, and they're like, "We feel really confident that you have celiac," but they're like, "You've probably had it for 15 years, like when you started manifesting." But it was a couple years ago where I was like, "Okay, like." Now I have to be serious about it.
Yep. The sleep thing is huge. I think that we're in this society where we value being busy all the time. And, oh, yeah, I got 6 hours of sleep last night or 4 hours of sleep last night. You're awesome. Like, you must be important. Ugh. How do we get away from that?
Well, I don't function. I came in this morning. I'm like, Jonathan, I barely slept last night. I'm dying.
Yeah.
How do we get away from that?
Besides bragging about sleep and bragging about getting a lot of sleep, as we do on Rest Day Brags.
I think just talking more about the importance of balance. Like, I do think, and maybe it's just like the company you keep or the people you follow, I do feel like there's more of a shift of people trying to find balance of some sort, whether it's in work or in training or like putting their phones away or whatever. I think the shift towards balance is going to help with that. And I think part of balance is sleep. I think part of balance is like shutting off earlier so you can wind down so you can sleep. I don't know the answer, but I think it's the more people try to find balance and we just talk more about sleep. It's, I mean, I don't know. Ask the psychologist that was here. Like, that's a hard question.
So it's fascinating because the other day or earlier in this week, my coach put a comment on the training log. This was after Monday, or after Tuesday, so I had a rest day. And his feedback was, let's really focus on making time for sleep, even if it means shorter runs. Mm-hmm. So here's a running coach who's saying you can run less and sleep more.
Yeah.
And to do that, you'll get better results.
Yeah. My coach told me the same thing.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, that makes sense. But it's been a consistent trend over the last year that like sleeping more leads to better running, sleeping more leads to better performance at work, sleeping more leads to, being there for friends and family and having more time and all that stuff, just being more present for people around you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I love traveling and I'm on planes a lot, and I love the reminder you get every single time that they mean it literally, but it can be taken as a metaphor. Like, put your mask on before you help those around you.
Yeah.
And if you're going through life overtired and overtrained and, burnt out, you're just taking up space and you can't be helpful to those around you. Sorry for the long tangent.
No, it's good. Well, that was like part of what led to me deciding to leave my corporate job is that I was like, what am I even doing with my life? Like, I'm not sleeping a lot. I'm working all the time. So like, where am I spending my time? I'm spending my time working.
Being busy, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not like enjoying time with family and friends or like my dog or my husband. It's like, why am I doing this? Yeah. And that was like a big aha for me was, well, one, like I started having panic attacks, like literal panic attacks. And I was like, this is just not a way to live long term.
But
like,
it's
what
also
was I
like
doing instead of sleeping?
Yeah. It's also like a luxury. Like we have the luxury, like you can leave your job and you have backup opportunities and backup options. So if you don't have that kind of thing, it's I guess you have to do little things to push forward, or like sleep 10 more minutes or 20 more minutes.
Like what are you doing instead of sleeping?
Exactly.
Like really being specific, identifying like, are you watching Game of Thrones? Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. I think a lot of it is being intentional with your time. My boss has, a handful of kids and we had a conversation about, but I have another coworker who also has, many of our coworkers have kids, but he was like, once you have kids, you start to have to be very intentional about all of your time. And like, this is a luxury that I have at the moment. Like, I don't have kids, things like that. Yeah. And he's like, you plan everything and you plan. So it's possible. It can be done. You just have to be more intentional with what you're doing.
Yeah. I see that a lot with my brothers. I grew up in a big family. I have 5 older brothers. They all have 4 kids. And they're just so intentional with their time. And I'm like super neurotic. I like plan my day in like 15-minute increments, like walk from here to there, do this from, it's like I'm crazy. But I imagine if or when I have kids, that's going to throw me for a loop.
Yeah. Just like not having the control.
Yeah.
So balance is something that I find fascinating. Some people, people go one of 2 ways. 1, you must be balanced, or 2, like fuck balance and just go all in. So I had a really interesting conversation with Magda Boulay about this, and her take is like everything she does is around being the best Magda she can. So whether that's Magda the Olympian, Magda the VP of Innovation at GU, Magda the mom, Magda the wife, Magda the dog owner, whatever it might be, she's the best at a handful of things versus spreading herself too thin. And the perspective she gave on a podcast a couple episodes ago was just fascinating, that like at the end of the day, you have to be, happy and fulfilled with yourself. And, what she said was I good to Owen today, which is her son, and my husband and at work and things like that? If yes, the other stuff doesn't matter. It's just gravy and it's just a bonus.
Yeah.
So I think it's fascinating to look at it with that approach.
Well, and I think it's so important to figure out like what your priorities are. And I was listening to a podcast. You've probably heard about the Passion Paradox, the second book that they wrote from Peak Performance. Brad and what's the other guy's name?
Steve Magnus.
Yeah. And they were talking about how balance is a myth. And it's like, think about like the best moments you've had in your life, and you were probably super unbalanced to get to that point. And I think that that's really, really important perspective, because if you have big goals and you have big dreams, like if you want to start your own business or you want to qualify for Boston, you're going to be unbalanced. But I think it's being aware of this is your priority right now, and being willing to sacrifice some other things, or they're not going to be your priority, and being okay with that, and like acknowledging it, I think is something that helps me when it's like, gosh, how do you do it all? And I'm like, well, I don't.
Right.
Like I do.
Pick your battles.
I do everything all in, a couple things, and then I drop everything else.
Right. I think that's the way to do it. It's not spreading yourself too thin. So you're giving 20% here and 50% here and 97% here, but you're never going to be 100% in any of those places.
Right.
What do you wish you knew about running or social media when you were just getting into it?
I think with running, I wish I knew more what my potential was. And I think it was so much more than I knew.
Meaning you put yourself in a I'm not going to be cute type.
Yeah. Like I'm not a fast runner.
Yeah.
Like you just give yourself labels. Like I'm not a fast runner. I'm not naturally talented. I didn't get a sports scholarship, and all my friends
But that's the cool thing about running. Like you don't have to be
exactly
talented.
You don't. Like it's just like such an equalizer.
Right.
But it's like all my friends were getting athletic scholarships, and I got the academic scholarship.
Yeah.
So I told myself I wasn't an athlete. And I wish I had taken that label off, that it's like literally anybody can be a runner. So I wish I had just given myself more grace when I was younger, and more opportunity to improve. And part of that is like just knowing training principles, like you don't know anything.
You can't go hard all the time.
Right. Shocking. And then social media, I think, gosh, I feel like I learn something new every day. I think that there's something that I don't know, that it's okay to be really, really open and honest, and it's okay to not put everything out there.
Which are sometimes conflicting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like, and it's weird. I'm like fiercely private about certain things, and then other things I'm like, here's my life.
Yeah.
Like I was throwing up
vomiting.
Exactly. I was throwing up the day before the race this year. And I think that's helpful for people to see. But then there's certain things that I'm like when I got engaged, like I didn't post on social media about it for 3 weeks, because I'm like, this is super special and I just want to keep it private. And I think with social media, it's okay to moderate, wherever it's important to you. Some people, and that's going to be different for everyone, but not feeling like you have to put everything out there.
So as someone that, has a fairly large following, how do you, I guess, get back to balance? How do you balance having a presence with being present?
It's hard. Sometimes I want to throw my phone out the window. Honestly, I have a friend and I'm like, I just want to go on vacation and throw my phone in the ocean. I schedule as much as I can for certain things. I have timers on my phone to start to cut me off.
Time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's some things where I'm like, I'm having a really, really nice time at dinner. I don't need to document this. I'm going to be super present at dinner right now. I think just being thoughtful about what I'm posting. But I also think it's helpful for people to see, and that's part of why I shared that I was puking the day before the race, is we all have
it's not all unicorns.
Yeah, we all have shit.
Yeah.
There's crap that happens.
And it's more relatable, and it makes
and people are so nice.
Yeah.
Gosh, people were so lovely. But I think the way I balance it is just being thoughtful about what I'm posting. Do I really need to be doing this right now, or can I just put my phone away and not document how cute my dog is? Let me just observe how cute she is.
Always document how cute a dog is.
She's really cute.
So maybe don't skip that one.
Okay, I won't skip that
all
one.
the rest.
Yeah.
Cool. Where can people find pictures of your cute dog and your running on social media?
A Foodie Stays Fit.
Awesome.
On Instagram, and that's my blog. It's my Facebook as well. Twitter, I tend to be a little more off the cuff, as you may have noticed. Yeah, it's a Foodie Stays Fit everywhere you'll look.
Awesome. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.